Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Jules Leyhe. I want to welcome you to my Slide Guitar Masterclass. I've broken it down into some different sections so we can get our technique together first with some building blocks. I have some exercises that focus on the left and the right hand and just kind of what we need to work on with each one and things to keep an eye out for. And then we're gonna move on to some specific artists who are some slide guitar legends that I'm sure you're familiar with. We're gonna break down some of their licks, just kind of understand where they're coming from, both technique and kind of like why they might play some of these things that they do that we know them for. And then I'm gonna take you through some of my own techniques that I really like and use. And we just want to expand what you already know as a musician, as a guitar player, as a slide guitar player. And we want to give you the ability to translate things that might not have been played by a slide guitar player and be able to play those as a slide guitar player and put your own spin on it. So come join me for this class. Let's get to it. We're going to dive into a lot of really technical slide guitar stuff. I want to start with our hands and what we're doing kind of with our right and left hand and talk about the tuning. I'm really focusing on open E tuning, so kind of thinking of like Duane Allman, Derek Trucks, Sonny Landreth, another guy who plays an open E quite a bit. These types of players and the phrases that they play, you'll see the tuning has quite a bit to do with some of the vocabulary that we get. I'm in open E, and I'll talk about my guitar and everything in a little bit, but the main thing I think for me with slide and sort of what separates guys like Derek Trucks from maybe somebody like Elmore James, both great players but distinct styles, is the right hand and the muting that's going on with the right hand. That somebody like Derek's really muting just about most of the time. What we hear is actually a product of how much muting is going on, because he's wailing on the strings. We really only hear one note quite a bit of the time. That's because he's muting 5 of the 6 strings when we're hearing these single note lines. All right, so this first right hand exercise is all about the ready position. And ready position is just this sort of relaxed spot that your hand should land in whenever it hits the strings. It's moved around quite a bit. So it's not that your hand sits and lives right here, but you want your hand to be this unit that moves over the strings in this way where each string gets a finger. This is really important for muting what we're not playing. And what you can start out with first is just hitting these strings open in order like this. Check this out. So you can see it's a pattern where I'm picking 3 strings and then going down 1 string and picking up 3 strings again. And I'll do it one more time just a little bit faster. Keep an eye on my right hand and how it's moving up the strings as I pick up. So I'm not worrying about my left hand at all yet, right? We're just worrying about the right hand. And I would recommend getting this together as slowly as you can at first. I picture like runners handing off a baton in a race. I think of this as like one runner is holding on to the baton when this happens. And we want to get that next runner the baton as smoothly as possible. The hands are both on the baton for a split second or a moment, but it's not this. Right? That's like both hands on the baton for too long. It's a smooth handoff from one string to the next. So you want to try to get the transition. You want to pretend that you're a saxophone player who can only play one note at a time. And we're trying to just get from each string as smoothly as possible and mute the last one right at the moment that we pick the next string that we're moving to. So, and again, I'm really emphasizing this because this is at the core of so much of the single note line stuff that we're going to play once we actually build some vocabulary. So this is worth spending some time on and really, really working till you have down. So again, here's that picture of the baton thing. Think about, getting to that next string and leaving the next one, muting the last string that you are playing right as you attack the next string. So I'm going to do that same exact picking thing with my right hand, but I'm going to add the slide with the left hand. And I'm just going to hold a chord down at the 12th fret. So this is an E chord, and you'll see this becomes pretty musical pretty quick. So I'm really not doing anything lick-wise. And this is a funny one because I definitely want to give you something to actually play on the guitar. As far as like, how do you work on this? Well, you play something on the guitar. I want to get into playing licks and get vocabulary going as soon as possible. So this is just a little thing that you should work on until you really have down. But then we're going to only be applying this technique across the board all the time when we're playing. You can do it the other direction. The point is to just get comfortable moving your hand along the strings as you're playing single notes. I said earlier that we don't want to just have your hand live right here. And what I mean by that is we don't want your hand stuck on this string group. We want your hand to be able to move around. And just to demonstrate what I really mean by this, I'm going to play something right now, just jumping around the strings. Keep an eye on how my right hand moves around in this sort of ready position, but it's moving around. It's definitely fluid. If we end up on the higher strings, like the B and E, playing single note lines like up high, your thumb tends to just kind of lay across the bottom strings. So you don't have to think about it too much. If you watch a guy like Derek Trucks, he is definitely, he's just got his thumb laying across the strings. It's much less of a sort of dexterous, wow, how is he muting all those strings magically? No, the thumb is just kind of laid across the strings muting. So once you get comfortable with it, you'll find your thumb is mighty convenient to just have kind of lay across most of the strings. But let me demonstrate a little bit of playing with this right hand muting. We want to just focus on watching the right hand move around. And I'm going to make sure to really play some licks and get some vocabulary in there. Just keep an eye on my right hand and listen to how the muting helps the phrase happen and helps the one note pop out of the top. So there's just a little E blues vocabulary. We'll get into all these licks and how to get those sounds yourself in just a little bit. But you can see it starts with the right hand and just that technique really being together. Let me show you what it's like if I don't focus on the right hand muting quite as much. You get it. There are great riffs like where we have a lot of sort of open strings and it's not as muted, but you can tell pretty much all of the information's lost when we're not muting. The muting is actually probably the biggest part of making your lines sound really good, making something pop, being able to really put some mustard on your notes with your right hand and play it like you mean it. That's the most important right hand thing to work on. Get your muting together, and now we'll talk about the left hand a little bit. So the right hand is obviously super duper important, and I'd argue more important than the left hand as far as if you're gonna focus on one thing, the right hand really dictates more of what's going on. But the left hand's tricky too, and you'll notice I have the slide on my pinky. If you were just starting with this, I would recommend the pinky. A lot of people like the ring finger, and a lot of people like the middle finger too for wearing the slide. I just think that you get the most flexibility with the rest of your hand, even though we're playing slide. And yeah, the slide frets the notes or is making the left hand notes sound. You still need to have a relaxed hand. I find that when this is going on, it's kind of in a weird place where like there's some joint or something that your middle and ring finger share where it kind of feels like I'm wearing a slide on two fingers. And now I don't know, I can't quite get comfortable myself wearing a slide on the ring finger. So I'd wear it on my pinky. There is definitely a lot to be said for being able to fret behind the slide. What I mean by that is like, here's an A chord at the 5th fret. If you put your slide on the pinky, what you can do is you can actually very comfortably, like here I'm gonna play a note at the 3rd fret on, it's the middle E string, the 4th string, what would normally be the D string, to turn this into an A7 chord. So here it is without fretting behind. But now here it is, I've got the 7th. Right, we've got a little 2-note chord here. So there are some voicings available to us behind the slide more comfortably if we play with it on our pinky. But this definitely comes down to what feels good for you, because this feels different for everybody. And I remember seeing Jeff Beck, one of my favorite guitar players ever, definitely a favorite slide player, and he wore it kind of up on the knuckle, like past the knuckle on his middle finger, which I couldn't, for the life of me, make work at all. So, take this with a grain of salt. You should figure out what works best for you. But like I said, if it doesn't, if you're just getting started here, I would do it on your pinky and try to get used to that. I think it'll offer you the most as far as what you're able to grab later on. The other thing with the left hand is that, simply put, the frets aren't there for us to actually play on the fret. When we play a note with slide, we're just resting the slide on the string like this. Right? If I push harder, we get something that we don't want. We don't want the notes to actually fret out. So you do want to use the frets as a visual marker so that you can simply play your notes in tune. I like to line up my slide along with the fret, or just as lined up with the fret as possible. Because when we're playing fretted, when we say we play an E note at the 12th fret, you can kind of play anywhere between the 12th and the 11th fret, and it'll fret out at the fret, right? That's what's great about frets. They play in tune for us. That doesn't happen with slide. So we really need to, here's my E string. In order to play that note in tune, you really need to play it on top of the fret. Listen to what happens if I move ever so slightly either direction. Here's on the fret. Here's a little above. So that's obviously not what we want. We want to play our notes dead on tune, or we want to at least be able to play them right in tune. And if we want, play them flat, a little sharp, put some vibrato on them. It's really important to match up your fret with the note that you're playing. Make sure that you're playing everything in tune right on top of the fret. Don't get lazy and get in the middle of the frets, because if you start playing along with a band or something, everybody else is going to be in tune, and if you're the only one playing licks out of tune, people aren't really going to want to play with you too much. Yeah, the left hand is funny. It kind of comes along after playing these things. It sort of gets shaped and informed by a lot of what the right hand is dictating first. When I do something like this, that's almost like a sweep pick type of thing with the right hand. Obviously, we're picking with our fingers, so it's kind of the equivalent of that. But the right and left hand are agreeing the whole time. They're playing one thing. And I think that the left hand, you just need to make sure that your intonation is there and that your hand is relaxed. When I'm playing, I can definitely wiggle these fingers. You know, my shoulder is loose. I'm not like, there's some of this that happens when people first start to play slide. Stiff fingers, stiff kind of everything, and guess what? It doesn't usually sound that great. So we really need to relax. Do that exercise that I showed you with the right hand. You know, your hand and your arm, you can go like this. Look at the range of motion I have. So if I can reach out here, I sure as heck should be able to go. Right? That's what we're working on being able to control. So with the left hand, most importantly, we want to make sure that we're playing in tune. If you're playing along with recordings or if you're playing along with a backing track or anything, it's really good to do that while you're playing slide at first, because playing in tune can be really hard on your own without another reference pitch, you know, something else that you're playing along with. But I'd say trying to relax your hand, getting the notes in tune, getting them in sync with the right hand, so that if you're doing something like that picking exercise, that we're just hearing the one note that you want to have pop out. That means your right and left hand are agreeing. There's no other way to really get that sound. So hope that helps getting your left hand together a little bit. Let's get into some more stuff now. All right, so my guitar is tuned to open E. And in this case, you're going to have to tune your guitar to open E tuning to play along. There are other tunings for slide. You can play in standard, open D, which is open E, but just down a whole step. Sounds a little bigger. And open G is a really great tuning as well. A lot of the technique stuff definitely transfers over, but as far as the vocabulary is concerned, this is definitely specifically an open E tuned lesson. And everything really will, you're going to benefit from tuning to open E for all of this. So what we get is, we get a lot of really interesting things. This is just like if we put our fingers down here to make an E chord, you know, one of the first chords that we know. Only now the guitar's tuned to that. So because this is an E chord, this is an F, this is an F sharp, and so on. We've got this big chord that we can play just by putting the slide on any fret. So with a style of music like blues, this is really cool because the blues, mainly focusing on the 1, 4, and 5 chord, we got the 1 chord here and here, the 4 chord, an A, at the 5th fret, and then at the 7th fret, a B chord, the 5 chord. So we're already able to play big chords and basically play a blues by just putting your slide at the right fret at the right time. So that's really cool. A common question I get is, well, what about minor chords, or what about other chords? And the cool thing about making a major chord a minor chord is all we need to do is change that one note, the third of the chord, so that it becomes minor. So let's say we have an A major chord at the 5th fret. In order to make that a minor chord, in my case, I like using my index finger on the G string. We're going to turn that C sharp at the 5th fret into a C natural. So now it sounds like this. So we're in that open E. It's a major tuning, but we're playing only minor chords now. This works really well if you're not even playing the slide, but you're just, say the singer is about to sing their chorus and you want to accompany. What I really like to do is take the slide off. I'll keep it on my pinky, but I won't play with it. I'll end up just going like this. Right? So I'm doing a couple of specific things here. And I know I'm talking about slide, but man, this is not a slide thing, but this is just to show you how much bang for your buck you can get from the tuning. Because a lot of people feel limited, like open E only has this one thing. I'm kind of stuck. I don't have a minor chord, I don't have this and that. I'm calling BS on that. I think there's a lot more to it. And if you can see just by doing this, you can play a great rhythm part behind the singer or, for whoever you're playing with, and then keep your slide on, come back in, play some slide licks, some slide leads or whatever you want, and then go back to playing some chords. It's definitely doable with this tuning. So that's one fretting behind the slide, getting a minor chord thing. Getting back to just what the tuning offers us first, we've got this big E major chord, and we get these really cool two-note voicings. I'm going to go up to the 12th fret, and I have it's the 4th and the 3rd string. They make an E and a G sharp. So in this case, that's an E major. But there's also an E minor if you go up one string group to the 2nd and 3rd string, and you go down to the 8th fret. This is now an E and a G. So 12th fret, 8th fret. So I love that we've got the major dyad here at the 12th fret. We've got the minor here at the 8th fret. And then, aside from just the big chords that we saw, where we got like an E, you can fret 2 frets behind on the E string, any E string, and it'll become a 7th chord. If you fret behind, I really like this voicing. If you fret behind at the 10th fret on the B string, that's a really nice little, if you play the G string as well, the G sharp string, you get this little cluster voicing. If you fret on the G string 2 frets behind, you get another little cluster voicing. A cluster is just a close voicing, like these notes that are a second apart, right? So they're nice and close. You can fret all these without the slide too if you want. One more thing with this tuning, and just something that I really like to get as much out of it as I can, is E major. I love doing things like we're kind of in like SpongeBob SquarePants territory here, right? All I'm doing is I'm playing diatonic dyads. So I'm thinking of, we're in E major. I'm going to play off of B and A major as well. And just get these little sort of pedal steel type of voicings. Right? So this is just sort of scratching the surface of what the tuning has to offer. But those are maybe some things that you hadn't considered yet. And I want to take these and apply them into some more kind of next level stuff. So buckle your seatbelt. Let's get to it. Okay, so we're ready to actually play some lines and get some vocabulary going. This is a really fun thing to talk about and get into. It can frustrate the heck out of you for a while because moving around the slide, it's not like, we've taken the frets away. And we really have to focus on playing in tune. And if your line starts getting out of tune, or your notes aren't distinct, it just turns into kind of mushy note soup, and it's just not quite what we want. We really want to play in tune and have conviction with our lines, be able to move our slide around like we mean it, and not just kind of like be surprised by what note the slide played for us. We want to really be the one playing the note like we mean it, because we mean it and because we're trained to do so. So what I would do to get really comfortable with this first is make sure that your pentatonic scales are figured out across the strings, and I'd start in the key of E and just start on one string. So in this case, we'll just play our E major scale. I'm going to play the major scale first, give you an exercise. We end up kind of using pentatonic a little more, but it's great to just know all of your scales, all of your notes. Obviously, I'd encourage you to learn, if you know the modes, if you know certain scales, I'd encourage you to try to transfer all of that here. But the way to kind of maybe get your foot in the door, if you're not super comfortable with that yet, is by doing something like just playing the major scale. And because of this new tuning, we want to make sure that we can get from one string to the next. So let's just start with the E major scale on the high E string. And here's what I would do. So there's your E major scale in all its glory. And just a note to you as you're watching this, please go back and watch this over and over and over. I have a lot of stuff I want to get to and a lot of little notes, a lot of runs. So I'm going to keep going, but I'd encourage you to just go back and watch this over and over and over, okay? So with this E major scale, I really want to make sure, like I said, I want to make sure that everything's in tune and just get comfortable. You might want to try landing directly on the notes. I'd try sliding from one to the next. And carry on past the 12th fret. Aside from just playing those notes, to turn it into a little bit more of a run or making it sound a little more gospel, like a vocal phrase, you might want to try this. This is sort of a stepwise scalar drill where we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. So you're going to go like this. I'm going to take that same principle, right, that same concept. I'm just going to play around with it for a sec, just so you can hear some of the music that you can make. This is from applying that drill, getting really comfortable with it, so you can just slide around and really have some fun. So check this out. So that's me just having fun for a sec in the key, E major, and just trying to connect the dots. I'd encourage you to experiment. I'm sticking kind of in that scalar, sort of like you go up 2 notes, back 1, up 2 notes, back 1. Do that till your roommate is tired of hearing you doing it. Because I do want to emphasize, I've practiced this stuff for a long time. I've been playing slide for, I don't know, like 20 years or something. So hopefully it sounds any good and it's in tune and all that stuff, but this is no joke as far as a skill set to develop. This takes a really long time. Getting vibrato, getting it to just sound like you're playing everything the way you want to. That definitely takes a while. Hopefully that little example of me playing over that helps illustrate some of what you can do with this sort of exercise. Now the next thing I'm going to talk about is that same exact sort of technique with the left hand and the right hand, but instead of the E major scale, we're going to use the E minor scale. And that looks and sounds like this. So this is definitely really, really, really cool. And we get into this, when we blend the major and the minor is when we get into all that like Aretha Franklin type of gospel soul singer vocabulary that we really love. And you can kind of hear it's, without getting too much into the theory stuff right now, I really want to focus on the technique just for this second. It's definitely really fun trying to push yourself to start with something like this. Once you start sort of accelerating with your slide and you're moving around faster, you start hearing that. It starts sounding like a singer. And that's totally the goal of this. So let me get into that a little bit. I'm going to do the same sort of thing where I'll just demonstrate some of the E minor sound. And I'm going to branch out just a tiny bit and use little embellishments. I just want to share some of how I play this stuff. So that's sort of the root of what I'm doing. But I might be adding little bells and whistles and things that we'll definitely get into more detail with very soon. But here's a little open E minor, thinking kind of like a gospel singer now, okay? So you can see, if you were listening really close, I blended some of that major in there right at the end. And it's not like, oh, shame on you, Jules. That's totally where we're heading, right? We're going to be blending major and minor. For your practice's sake at home, I'd try to focus on just one for now. We're really wanting to isolate things so that we have as much control of them as possible. I didn't start blending major and minor, but now it's kind of part of my intuition is to do it. So I just try to really focus on playing those notes in tune, sliding around from position to position, because you can see by the 5th note that we're playing, we've gone from open to the 10th fret. So if we're doing that kind of quick, those sorts of stopping at the 10th fret like I was just doing, you stop for just the briefest of moments and you have to practice those runs like this. I'm just going 7, 10, 12, 7, 10, 12, and then back down. That's a great lick to practice all on its own. The major version of that would be 7, 9, 12. So you see, if we can do one, all we do is we change one note, and now we're playing the, we've got either the major or the minor sound right at our disposal for us, but not before we practice getting each note in tune, okay? I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit, trying to hammer this home because we just can't play all the crazy, Derek Trucks, world-saving guitar hero type of stuff until we get these techniques down. So work on your right hand, your left hand. Make sure you're listening to the intonation, and hope that helps you get that stuff together. We're going to get into some specific licks next, so come hang out with me now. All right, so now that we have some of the techniques in place, I want to start applying them. It's funny because I think there's a lot to be gained by being able to really play some kind of cliche phrases. The word cliche is kind of dangerous because it sounds like it's a bad thing, but that's what makes a lot of the blues, or these patterns, these things that repeat. There's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of sort of traditional phrases that we want to hear. I'm going to show you one of my favorite ways to start getting really comfortable with all this stuff. I'm staying in the key of E, and we're going to play some blues licks in the 12th position, so up at the 12th fret. And I want to just show you how much you can get by just playing between 2 frets. And what you're going to do is, since we're playing in the key of E, we're going to think about playing at the 10th and 12th fret. If I really don't think about too much other than that right now, I'm just going to play 10, 12. Starting on the low string and going up, it sounds like this. You can see I'm moving my hand across, right? I'm doing all the muting. And okay, great. None of those notes were terribly wrong. Nothing was that exciting, but we've got somewhere to start. The reason I'd recommend 10, 12, and I'm going to now just play a little bit. Let me zoom forward to where this is headed. All the same stuff, 10, 12 are our only frets, but I'm going to actually play some licks. Watch how much is sitting right at the 10th and 12th zone for us. I didn't move past 12. I didn't move further than 10. And I'm totally playing all the, this sounds like Duane Allman or something like that. So what I would encourage you to do is just pick on 10 and slide up to 12. And I'm putting vibrato on that 12th fret note, right? I'm kind of, it's like we're happy to be there every time. You can also do the exact opposite, sliding from 12 to 10. If you start to combine them, it just starts sounding like Live at the Fillmore East. Check this out. Here's that lick I just showed you, 12, 10, sliding from 12 to 10. And I'm just going to do that from each string and listen to how it sounds. Right? This is totally Duane Allman territory. So, honestly, if you focus on this sort of playing, just playing your notes the conviction, the intonation. I'm clearly really digging in with my right hand. It's not this apologetic little. I really mean it. You know, I'm taking my shot because I'm up here. So getting comfortable with it. My hand is just, you can watch my right hand. I'm just muting. My thumb is just laying across the strings. I'm not thinking about it that much. I'm really just thinking about the note that I'm trying to get to pop because all the other techniques are in play, right? So one more time, I'm gonna just play a little more between the nooks and crannies. I'm talking about 10 and 12, but included there is 11. And included in that too, because of the slide, is we have all these notes. We've got so many little microtonal notes in there that we can hit, land on, sit on, kind of hang on for a sec. So I'm going to think 10 and 12, that's sort of my parameter, but now I'm gonna try to add some of those in between the nooks and cranny notes. And this now presents us with, like, forget what scale we're in. We're playing blues with this microtonal, you know, there's so much in between the nooks and crannies type of info. If you get good at this, it can't help but sound like you. And that's definitely the biggest goal here. We want you to come out being able to, you know, really get your voice across with this. So here's 10 to 12, but with, you know, all those extra bonus notes in between. This is starting to really get in the zone that I love. I love those microtonal. Is it the flat third? Is it the major? You know, it's kind of in between. That's where I just think the slide really shines, because we have all this, you know, those notes are just really what make it exciting. We're not worried about playing super fast right now. We want to just make this sound like, you know, how I want the guitar to sound. So for me, that's all very exciting. I love those kind of wrong notes that sound so right. You know, that's what we're getting to with that. And that starts by just thinking of 2 frets. So if you then take off those parameters, those limitations, the 10th and 12th fret, gosh, this is going to open Pandora's box as far as what this has to offer to you. But I would really focus on 10 to 12. I love that zone. If you're playing a blues in C, that would be kind of more like 8 and 6, right? You can play, if you're playing in G, you can play your blues out of the 3rd fret. That's also the beautiful thing about this open E tuning, is that it all just transfers around. Whatever key you're in, oh, you can just move it. You're playing in D, that's gonna be at the 10th fret, right? You don't have to live there. You can move around and play it in other places, but that's a great place to start. We'll get more comfortable with this and move around other places, but really work on those 2 fret apart licks, the 10 to 12 thing. If you get really good at that zone, your slide playing is gonna come really far. And that's gonna help us out with the stuff that we're about to get to next. So on our Mount Rushmore of slide guitar players, there's definitely a spot reserved for this next man. This is Duane Allman. I want to talk about Duane's technique, the sound. You know, he really took some of the slide guitar things that we had heard at the time and just expanded upon them, sort of put his signature sound on them, and really influenced a lot of, you know, what we hear today in slide guitar playing. So much of it came from Duane. And so much of it came really specifically from the Live at Fillmore East recording of Statesboro Blues. This piece of music is really worth studying, spending a lot of time on, getting under your slide, under your fingers. And I want to break down some of these initial licks for you. Back in, I think it was 2017, I had an article published in Guitar Player magazine where I was talking about Duane Allman and his style, his sound, his licks. So I'll make sure that the video that I shot for that is available to you here. But I do want to go over these licks here for Statesboro Blues. It's such an important piece of music that I think if you work on this and learn even one or two of the licks, that your playing is going to really improve. So there's this call and response thing that happens at the beginning of each phrase that he plays, where it goes like this. And we're in the key of D in Statesboro Blues, so we're kind of thinking out of the 10th fret zone. And this first lick is on the B string. We're just going back and forth from 10 to 8. And this is where we're going to get all of our techniques checked for us, because you don't want this. You really want those notes muted when you're not playing them. And you really want them to be in tune. So that's the sort of call, and that happens each time there's a lick. The first lick goes like this. So after that call, we slide into the third, which is on the G string at the 10th fret. And when you listen to that recording, he is clearly imitating a harmonica. That's what Duane's thinking about so much of the time when he's playing a lick like this. So this first part sounds like this. I love this because there's so much phrasing and the language comes out with the right hand. After hitting this G string, there's sort of a grace note. I like to pick it with my thumb. And it doesn't really matter. It's kind of emulating that breathing that a harmonica player would do. So it's sort of like a hiccup note or something with your thumb. I like to go like this. Right? It's kind of subtle. Then we get the call again. And we go up here, we play this lick. So that's a triplet. You might find this top part where you slide into the A, then the F sharp. You might find it easier to stay in that neck of the woods and play this next part on the B string. I kind of like that. This is nice, sliding back from the 15th fret on the B string to 13. Because right below on the 13th fret, we have the A. See how you don't have to move very much? It's sitting right there under the slide. So you might want to go. Okay. The next call. Very much responding to that first lick he played. It's sort of exaggerated. The slide takes a little longer and it's a little more. Right? Then the last part. This is, if there's ever sort of, definitive Duane Allman lick, this is certainly one of them. This goes right back to what I said a moment ago about emulating a harmonica player. We're kind of emulating their breathing, the actual notes they're playing, but the breathing, the blowing through the harp, the reeds. That's what is going on here. We really need to pick these notes with a lot of conviction, and the actual lick is basically this. It's on the B and the G string, sliding into the 10th fret. I would start sliding into the 10th fret on the B string. And then, just like before, you're going to mute when you're not playing one string, you're muting the other. So it's this kind of rocking back and forth action that we get. But what you do is you sort of pivot between the 10th fret note on the G string and the 8th fret note on the B string. So you're playing the 10th fret on the G string both times, but you're alternating between the 10th and the 8th on the B. And you get this little zone where you go, it sounds like this. Right? So that whole part would be like this. And the way that lick ends, the very last thing, there's a drum roll and the verse starts. So it's kind of it's a little hard to actually hear. But it's just kind of like a last little falling down lick. Right? Then that's some of what he plays during the first verse. So let me play the whole head for you. And I want to just also explain really quick, I'm not doing this with a backing track or anything. I really want us to focus right now on just playing the guitar. You know, we're not worrying about playing along with the drummer or anything. That's definitely something we'll get to. That's super important. I'm not saying it isn't. But for right now, I just want you to really hear and see what I'm doing on the guitar so that you can do it yourself, okay? So let me play the whole Statesboro Blues head and check it out. Feel free to watch this over and over and over. Play along with the original. That's what I've definitely spent tons of time doing. And here it sounds something like this. So in the key of E, Stand Back is a great Allman Brothers tune. I love playing this song live. I've played it live in a handful of bands. And as far as just how Duane sounds on this song and playing, you know, in the key that the guitar is tuned to, where in E, he just has this great natural feel. It always feels kind of loosey-goosey and comfy. And this is something that's really important to try to get in your slide playing because, you know, Duane is definitely, he's not uptight, nothing's stiff, everything really feels relaxed. And so when we're listening to Stand Back and trying to get some of those licks ourselves, that's what we really want to aim for here. Also, just a little side note, if you're checking out all this stuff, you have quite possibly heard of a great guitar player, Jack Pearson. If you haven't heard of Jack Pearson, check him out. There's this great YouTube video of Jack playing one of Duane's old guitars. And when Jack is playing these licks, he really has the vibe of Duane. He really captures the vibe, this loosey-goosey thing that I'm talking about. And so that's what we really want to hone in on now. So, and Stand Back has some signature licks, but we're really talking about and thinking about the vibe here. So thinking about Duane in E, 12th fret, and just some tendencies that he has. One thing that he loves to do is he'll go like this. I think of this as kind of like swoopy. What I mean by swoopy is he's doing a lot of this. swoopy is different than what, say, Derek Trucks is doing. It's more of this laser-like intonation thing. So this sort of you can hear there's some bending, there's some in between the nooks and crannies, but with Duane, it's a little less of like, he's not playing these 5-note per string runs. He's not doing the gospel soul singer like runs across one string that are really tough. It's more position-based and kind of lick-based. This is sort of... We're barely doing anything. This goes back to what I said before about the playing between 2 frets. That's really where this sort of shines and sounds great. And there are a couple of really cool, fun little sort of bell and whistle tricks out of this tuning. At the 12th fret, if you pick the G and B string, this sure is fun to rock back and forth on. You can slide this up 3 frets from 12 up to 15. And now this has some of that blues harmonica sound to it for sure. Right? You can see how I love the term building blocks. If we use those things that we learned in building blocks, we just expand on them and they start to sound like, Duane Allman. I'm just rocking back and forth. I'm trying to keep it as much one note at a time as possible. But this is definitely where we're smearing and blurring lines here, right? This is not like, well, hang on, there's 2 notes sounding at one time for a sec, Jules. You said that. No, I want to have enough control so that I can make 1 note sound at a time. But as soon as we're actually playing a lick like this, I kind of want to smudge the edges. I want a couple of notes. I'm totally in charge of just how much 2 notes versus 1 there is because my right hand is dictating that part of the story. Let me just play for a sec what I really mean. I'm going to try to keep it a little cleaner and then get it a little more smudgy, a little more bluesy, a little more string action. We like all that stuff. We definitely want that in there. That gives our playing some character and this interesting sound. But we definitely just want to be able to clean it up and refine what we're doing so that we only hear it just how we really intended and that we don't look at this thing and go, I have no idea what my right hand's doing, but at least I got my open E tuning. No. We want to make sure that you're really telling the story specifically like you want. So here's a little more precise, and then I'm going to play a little more sort of sloppy, blurring the edges, however you want to put it. But check this out. Here's more precise. And I love that. 1 note at a time, kind of like a singer or a saxophone player. Here's that same type of playing, but I'm going to make it a little more messy. I don't know which one I like more. I kind of like both of them. And bottom line, doesn't matter which one I like more. I'm in charge of providing both. You want to be able to do either one. This is not calculated thing. It's just how I'm feeling, and I can kind of like shift the Venn diagram over of like clean and kind of sloppy and get just the right amount of whichever one I want. That's a big picture thing for how this all works. You don't want to play too square, and this isn't really blues. Like, that's okay. It was in tune. It was a lot of good things, but it wasn't like. Right? That just had a little more like sass. It really sounded more like I meant it. So as far as listening to Duane, I'd try to just listen and pick up on the vocabulary, pick up on these things. He's less strict with things like muting. I think he wasn't thinking about it as much as maybe we are right this second. So that's kind of important to think about. But live at the Fillmore East, Eat a Peach, those records, honestly, between those two alone, you add things that he did in his career, like The Wait with Aretha Franklin. That's a really great track. I love that track. He's playing some great slide on that. Obviously, tunes like Layla. That's one of the most famous guitar tracks of all time, and he's playing this ripping solo on that. Some great slide. I think if you listen to those and you listen to them sort of through this lens and picking up that vocabulary that we just worked on, hopefully that'll inform a lot of your playing, and you can start to sound a little bit like Duane if you want to. Hopefully it sounds like you too, but it's really great to just add flavors of guys like Duane into your playing and just sort of inspire some new sounds. So hope that helped. So we've talked a little bit about Duane Allman, and it kind of leads us right to the next person we're going to talk about, and that is Derek Trucks. Derek definitely takes everything that Duane put into slide guitar and all of his playing, really takes it to another level, just kind of with the technique, the precision, some of the runs. I think he sort of expands. When I think of Derek and I watch him, he definitely plays those sorts of position-based licks, like say we're in the key of E. He will do things like. So that was me staying quite in the sort of like 12th fret zone right there. But Derek just kind of knocks all those sort of barriers down. He's really, every string is a spectrum, and there isn't really one thing that's not potentially connected to the next. This is some very difficult slide guitar stuff we're about to talk about here. So want to just bring it up and bring your attention to certain parts of his playing, and let's start to be able to play those a little bit. I want to talk about the tune Midnight in Harlem. This is definitely a fan favorite of folks of the Tedeschi Trucks band, but people love this song, and it's a really gorgeous song. They always give Derek kind of the floor to rock the house and play an epic solo on this tune. And it's in the key of E major. He's really sticking in major. He's not doing little bluesy sort of minor licks in there. It's usually pretty much straight up E major. And I went over the E major scale, specifically doing slide stuff with it, in another earlier lesson, so be sure to check that out. But I do want to sort of build upon that and make it a little more related to Derek. So thinking about how he would play over Midnight in Harlem, we're really using the E major scale, and that would be. That's me picking every note. Feel free to do things more like. See how with just a little bit of phrasing, a little bit of connecting some notes that aren't just the root. We're not just going do, re, mi. we can start to really kind of sound like Derek. Let me give you just a couple of specific lines to play. So starting with our open E string, we want to get really comfortable with targeting the chord tones. In this case, they're E, G sharp, B, and E again. So we want to start by landing on those at the end of a phrase. So we might go like this. See, really trying to make it sound nice and sweet, landing on the notes that, the chord tones really sound great to land on. You don't only have to land on the chord tones when you're soloing, but for right now, we want to just kind of have that as our goal for making these lines start to happen, because it can be really weird when you go E major scale. Great. We need a little bit more of something to shoot for that, hence our chord tones. But you can see what I'm doing is I'm really trying to, Derek has been doing this his whole life. So he's not thinking about a pattern or a scale or some shape. He's really singing in his head. And he's singing all these lines. I guarantee you that's what he's doing. He's thinking, what he's playing. It is one thing. So we want to be able to do that as much as possible. We want to be able to slide around in tune. I love doing things like this. That's G sharp at the 4th fret. This is kind of like a C sharp minor lick, right? We've got the relative major and minor thing going on. So E major is C sharp minor. So this is kind of like a C sharp minor lick. We can kind of get away with doing the minor thing that we really like by thinking about the relative minor. In this case, it's sounding E major, but we can also think of C sharp minor. And this has a very soul singer, blues singer, Aretha Franklin, Etta James type of sound to it. So if you play something in that C sharp minor zone, and then finish the line on an E major chord tone, E, G sharp, or B, now we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. And check this out. I'll do some of that right here for you. So that's some sort of Derek influenced. I am really just trying to stick on the top 2 strings here. I went below a little bit, but I'm definitely trying to get some of the traveling across the string this way. The more position-based you are, the less legato lines you can get, like. Right? That's all moving across the string on one string. So we're definitely trying to incorporate more of that into our playing by checking these Derek Trucks phrases out. One thing that I would try to do to increase your ability to just get comfortable with this, and with the risk of falling flat on our face here, we kind of say you do a lick like the scalar thing where we go up 2 or 3 notes, back down 1 note, back up 2 notes. If we do that here, it might sound like this. If you're doing that kind of slow, you're not going to get the Derek element because Derek's shredding this. So that does matter because that has to do with the phrasing. That has to do with the velocity of how you move your slide across the string brings out certain harmonics when you really move it fast. There's just simply more action with the notes if you're doing it kind of faster. So I would try to use this as a little practice tool to work on your intonation and simply getting your little Derek Trucks lines to seep into your playing. Because if you do things like this, that's starting to sound a little more like Derek, you know? That is definitely a Derek Trucks ism, or, you know, that's the type of thing that he would play. So, yeah, there is this sort of C-sharp minor, relative minor zone that we can play out of. And that's simply put, you can either play that sounds really nice. That's, you know, I keep saying it, that's like just Derek in a nutshell right there. Or you can just think of it as E major. So there's one very specific lick that I want to talk about and break down and get you comfortable playing, because if you can get this, I feel like this is a really great phrase for breaking out of position-based playing and getting you comfortable moving around the neck. There's a little phrase that Derek plays a lot, and it sounds something like this. Something to that extent, and he does it 100,000 different little ways. But what we're doing is we're taking the first, I believe it's, it's the pentatonic scale in E major. And that would be. And now what we want to do more of that one string type of thing that I was just talking about is, instead of playing the E right here at the 12th fret of the E string, we're going to move it down and play it at the 8th fret of the G sharp string. Definitely starting to sound like Derek. It goes back to that relative minor thing I was just talking about, where C sharp, the 6 of E, is a great note to hit. We really like it, and it's starting to sound a little more C sharp minor when we do that. But it's more of like a gospel soul singer, like they hit the 6 all the time. They'll go. Right there, I slid down to the 6th below the root, right? Here's the root, E. There's just a little bit of kind of what you can do with that lick, right? Again, he'll do all sorts of things with it. He won't necessarily just play it one way every time. Here's an example of staying in position a little bit more and still playing that same idea. You don't have to move from 12 to 10 right on the dot. When you get comfortable with the intonation, you don't even think about it as 12 or 10 or whatever. You're simply expressing yourself. And it takes a lot of work to get to that point, but that's what I'm trying to show you, is that it's a feel thing. We really have to get a feel for this. I feel like we're a chef cooking some family recipe of a chocolate cake or something, and how much sugar is it? I don't know. You feel it out. We just kind of feel out how much of the 12th fret we want versus the 11th fret versus, it's kind of this feel thing. So, and I'm analyzing all this under a little magnifying glass. Really want to break this down. If you can learn one of these licks, and if you can just practice the heck out of it, that's going to take you so far. I've worked on all of these Derek trucks, Duane Allman. I've worked on all these licks a lot. And while I feel like it's great to be able to play the specific lick note for note, like it is on the record or the solo or whatever it is, it's just more important to be in that person's head, know what they're thinking, why did they play this? What makes sense for me to play when I go to my blues jam that I play in every week, or in my buddy's band when I'm playing? How can I take these things and apply it? That's what I want you to get out of this. So let me just keep milking that lick for all it's worth right here, and just want to show you, how much you can get out of one idea, because there's really just so much. You can endlessly try to play this, and get new things out of it. So here's that E major lick starting at the 12th fret, and just check out all of its little iterations. One of my favorite YouTube videos of Derek playing is shortly after Greg Allman died. The Tedeschi Trucks Band is playing this show, and they play this great version of Statesboro Blues. And at the very end, the shuffle is still going on. The band is playing, but they really bring it down, and they kind of just sort of like, the song's playing, but they gradually just turn the volume down, and it opens up to Derek playing Amazing Grace as a little tribute to Greg. And it's such a beautiful moment, and his playing is so great, and that is just such a great tune to work on some of this stuff with. Some of these, moving your slide across the strings, playing in tune. I mean, just about everything we've talked about so far is really illustrated with this live performance of Amazing Grace. So I want to break it down a little bit. I want to talk about playing Amazing Grace. There's a funny balance of playing Amazing Grace and then throwing your own sort of flavor and like filling in the notes with little runs that sound like you. And I think that's one of the things to me about this live recording that just knocks me out. It's like, he plays the song so beautifully, and then he really like kicks ass when appropriate. And it's not too overbearing. It's really just a lovely tribute to Greg. Also, whenever we're playing, one thing that I really like about anything that's not in the key of E is that we really have to know our fretboard. So we're in the key of D now. We don't have all the open strings. We don't quite have, we've just got to make sure that we're really cognizant of what notes we're playing and when and where. So I'm going to just play it for a sec, and then we'll talk about some of the things that I'm doing. So here's Amazing Grace, kind of in the style of Derek Trucks, and there is this great YouTube video of him. This is a specific thing that I'm referencing, but in general, we're thinking about Amazing Grace in the style of Derek Trucks. So it's just a great melody that everybody instantly recognizes. And one of my favorite parts about it is you play it once down an octave, ramp it up a little bit, up an octave. Sounds just great. Sounds awesome. It's beautiful. There are definitely places, I'd say at the end of each phrase, there's sort of some space and some time to throw in a little lick, or maybe, here's an example of how I might sort of embellish the first part of the melody. I'm going to start up the octave. So I'm definitely trying to stick close to the melody, but there are some moments where, just embellish, throw a little run in. Another thing is that I am a huge fan of the volume pedal. And if you're wondering, how the heck is he doing all that? I've got a volume pedal that my foot is always kind of living on. And Derek does not do this, but I think that I'd encourage you to get a volume pedal and try playing with a volume pedal. There are ways you can definitely play with the volume right off your guitar, but for me, I love doing things like this. So you can hear when I have the volume pedal all the way up, it's nice and full, it's saturated tone. But if I roll it back just a little bit, it cleans up. When you're moving your note around with the slide, that's a really cool time to dig into the volume pedal. You can kind of start out soft and then give it some more. Here's no volume pedal, just all at max volume. Pretty nice. We've still got room to go from there. But that's plenty of saturation. I love how that's sounding. So, between those, just considering what note choices you're doing, little bluesy minor over the major melody, combined with a little bit of foot swelling with your volume pedal, that's the sort of thing that gets these notes and these runs sounding like they're, very vocal-like phrases where it's not just, let me shred this as fast as I can, but you can really get some heart and soul, some feeling in these lines. So I'd encourage you to try the volume pedal thing. Again, Derek does not use a volume pedal. He's doing anything he's doing right from the guitar right here. It's similar. It's definitely different overall, but I think I'd encourage you to get the volume pedal and try that. Really brings all these lines to life. So anyway, with those Derek Trucks phrases, getting inside of Derek's head, inside of his playing, breaking down some of that stuff, I really think that you'll start to add some more challenging lines in your playing. You can really start to sound like a singer now. This sort of thing is really tough. I'd break it down into like 2 or 3 note lines. Here's a really good one to start. Staying in the key of D. Super classic moment, super classic line. 10, 12, 15. You can practice that all day. I'm playing one idea, and you can just see how if you really get it, so you can hit those notes like you mean it, this is definitely what it's all about. Just work on this stuff and hit it. Don't be afraid to fall flat on your face and have it kind of suck for a while. You really do need to take these leaps to get that playing happening and sounding good and confident. I would just really try to hit it hard and then work on containing what you don't want to hear. That's the best way to do it. It's really kind of, you kind of got to jump in the deep end without feeling the water first with some of this stuff in order to get better. That's what at least worked for me. I remember just hearing some playing of mine and I thought, I kind of went for that thing and man, what's missing? I didn't really go for it. I was kind of afraid or something. So we need to conquer that. We need to really, we're 100% in charge here. So in order to get these lines going, it is definitely no joke. Derek Trucks is one heck of a slide guitarist, but he has so much to teach us from all this. So I hope that you can add some of this to your playing, and hope you gained a lot from this lesson. All right, I'm really excited for this next part of our lesson. One of my biggest guitar heroes in the world, and I'm sure possibly one of yours too, is the one and only great Jeff Beck. I started playing after seeing Jeff one night back in 2001. I was 11 years old and saw this concert just kind of coincidentally, and immediately it changed my life. Just being in the room with him and having my ass kicked by how much it rocked was just something it was one of those moments that spun me off in this direction, and I just have so much of my guitar playing and my so much of what I care about in my life I really owe to Jeff. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to apply some of what he does on normal guitar to playing on slide guitar. So I want to break down "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers," which is arguably his sort of signature tunes. When people think of Jeff, this is definitely one of the songs that they think of when they think of him. So it starts out with these beautiful volume swells that he's doing. He's playing a Telecaster on the original recording. So he's doing them with his hand, and he's doing them like Roy Buchanan or, Actually, that's a fun fact. If you haven't checked out Roy Buchanan's "The Messiah Will Come," you got to go check it out. Let me know what you think about that. If you have not heard "The Messiah Will Come" by Roy Buchanan, it's one of the things that influenced Jeff the most, and you'll hear that influence that he got from Roy. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about these intro volume swelly licks. It's very simple. It's just playing a D going down to C. Since he's bending it, we're going to emulate it by going like this. And here's where I love to use the volume pedal. To me, I've got plenty to worry about with my right and left hand up here. I don't need to also be trying to do this. So I'm just going to use my foot. Okay, so the melody is, it's a really haunting melody. This was actually written by Stevie Wonder for Jeff Beck. And the melody is a great way to check where you're at with playing a melody on guitar, specifically slide. In this case, I'm going to go through and play it how I would play it. And there are a couple of things because of the tuning. You know, these notes fall where they do. It's definitely different than how we've played it before if you've played it in standard tuning. And that's the beauty. That's how we're learning about how to play, you know, a melody that wasn't written for this. It's not in open E or anything. We want to be able to do things that are in standard tuning in open E with confidence and sound good doing it. So I'm going to play through it, and then I'll highlight some of the things about it, but I really want you to pay attention to, you know, how I'm moving around, just trying to get a little bit of those Jeff Beck isms in how I play it. Well, obviously I'm not Jeff Beck. I'm just going to do my best and try to sound like me a little too. But I want you to just check out how I use the slide. Listen for the volume, which is by my right foot. So here is a bit of "'Cause We've Been It As Lovers," the melody. So that's the main melody, right? And I did slightly abbreviated versions, or I played the A and then the B section. And it's a good little workout for slide guitar, just getting those notes. There are so many ways that Jeff bends a string and releases the bend. His intonation, he's always doing little in between the nooks and cranny types of notes. You know, it's not like right on the fret. He's kind of bending notes in and out. And just doing something like this. I'm breaking that down in my head to kind of two different expressions, right? Like this first one. And I want the other one to not just be exactly. I want to make it slightly different. One thing also is the timbre of the note that you get when you pick is greatly affected by where you pick on the string. So if you pick a note up here, kind of more like by the fretboard, it's going to have a more round, it's going to have, just sort of a bigger, round, sort of less definitive tone to it versus if you pick down by the bridge, that's going to make it, a little more sort of harsh and trebly. So even just by picking along the string at a different point, that's going to affect how the volume pedal works. That's going to affect how your amp responds. Those are all things to consider if you're trying to just get the most out of the guitar and with your fingers. We don't want to buy a flanger pedal, throw that in there, and then, oh, great, we've just got this flanger pedal. We really want to make the absolute most with just our hands. In my case, I've got a volume pedal, but that's not really coloring the tone. It's not like a tube screamer or something. It's just giving us the volume there or not. So I'd encourage you to explore picking up and down the string. With this one, there's a solo in C minor. And depending on versions of him playing this, sometimes he'll really start out and like take his sweet time, play really, he'll start like, right? So I'm pausing there, but you can see I started out kind of slow, giving myself space to ramp up, right? Sometimes Jeff's just wailing right from the get-go, and then he starts his solo kind of like, pot of water's already boiling, and then he goes from there. Try different things. Just try experimenting and expanding what you would usually do to just make it sound like you. Take some of Jeff's spirit and, this beautiful vehicle for music, this song, 'Cause We've Been As Lovers, try to play it with your own spin, your own sound. So this tune just has so much to offer us, whether you're playing it fretted or if you're playing on slide. And as a matter of fact, funny because I played this song for years, just like the standard version on regular tuned guitar. And I think if you play things both standard tuning and in slide, you end up seeing this sort of, oh, okay, this translates, this doesn't, but this other thing you can kind of, oh, okay. It's really interesting to try it in more than one way. And I just think that what you learn in one tuning really transfers over to, it sort of, it impacts what you might play in the other tuning. So for me, having played this mostly in standard tuning kind of my whole life, as soon as I started playing it in this open E tuning on slide, I felt like it started sounding more like me. And that's definitely the goal here. We want your voice to come out. So I'd encourage you to not just pick this song, but I'd try to pick any song you can and try to translate it into this open E language that we're working with here, And just see what's kind of clunky, phrasing-wise. See what might lay under your fingers like really easily. But that's kind of what the goal is with this one. And this tune is just, for being able to express yourself on the guitar, it's hard to think of a better song than this one. So I hope that helps you a lot. One of my favorite Jeff Beck records is Guitar Shop. It's super playful, fun, great tunes, really interesting sounding record. And of course, Jeff's just smoking on it. He's just ripping. It's awesome. And one of the best tracks from it, and one of my favorite parts of Jeff's playing is when he plays these ballads. He kind of plays ballads like Miles Davis does in the jazz world on trumpet. Like, he has this singular voice when it comes to this sort of soft, beautiful sounding guitar playing. So I want to take the tune Where Were You and show you how to do it on slide guitar. And this is just one of those, it's very delicate. The notes are, each one needs to be treated with respect, and it sounds funny, but it's like, you're just not going to get that sort of impact from it if you don't think about this as like every note really needs our focus, and every single one matters here. That might be a weird way of describing it, but I want to play it for you so you can see what I'm talking about. hopefully you know this song, and if you don't, check out Where Were You from Guitar Shop. It's a really cool kind of short tune, but I'm going to go through the parts right now. I'm going to just play it for a minute, and then I'll break down the parts one by one. So here is Where Were You? So those are the parts, and I might have abbreviated a couple of sections. I think the main theme, that plays 4 times, and I just played it twice, just sort of, we get the point. But the point here, like I said before I started playing, with just the weight that each note carries, you know, we're really like, a couple times I just went, it's like the softest delivery of a note that you possibly could. You know, again, listen to how loud this is and how distorted it is with my volume pedal all the way. Right? That's like all the way. So we're single digit percentage of like what we have of our full sound, right? We want like 6% of the note. And then work on this lick right here. I'll slow it down for you a little bit. And remember, the way we're doing this is just specifically very different. We're playing slide. Jeff's doing all this with the whammy bar, which is, again, like crazy. his precision with the whammy bar is kind of unmatched. It's incredible. But we can definitely get close with this, and that's what's so great about translating it from how he's doing it to how we're going to do it. It can't help but expand what we're able to do with slide, right? So that's the main theme, and this is just, like I said, treat this with so much care and respect. I would play it balls out. And then try to go as soft as you can. Right? You can just see, I'm not hitting 3 pedals on and 3 pedals off, and then I'm ready. It's 100% controlled from the volume pedal. And just that range you get is kind of hard to mess with. I think it's really important. So then we get these kind of crazy high note runs where once we get up past the 12th fret, the frets are physically closer together. Our notes are not as far apart as they were down here. So if we're playing something like playing 3, 4 notes, we have to really watch our intonation once we get up here. So I'd watch your intonation, make sure that when you play a line like that, your thumb is taking care of all the other strings muting, right? We didn't hear any of this. That's all taken care of by my big fat lazy thumb, right? It's just right across the strings. Yeah, I watch the performance if you want to transcribe what I'm actually doing. There's one part where there are these harmonics that Jeff hits. I'm not hitting those harmonics because of the tuning. We can't do that. We're going to get a really messed up line if we do those harmonics. So I just went like this. So I'd say Jeff Beck, if you just listen to and transcribe any of his solos, any licks, any phrases, literally anything of Jeff's that you can pick up and put into your playing, his palette of what he has to offer, and like the colors on his paint palette, to use a metaphor, it's just so plentiful. There's so much there that if you can just get anything into your standard tuning playing or your slide playing, you're just gonna, you're gonna grow a lot. So I hope that you learned a lot from these 2 lessons on Jeff, and I hope that you learned something new about a great guitar player. Okay, so one of my favorite techniques that I find myself using a lot is playing a harmonic and sort of catching it with the slide and moving it around. It's kind of like a theremin sort of effect. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to play the open B string, and I'm thinking kind of like E major, kind of gospel, that sort of harmonic land that we're in. So here's without catching a harmonic. Now here's what the harmonic sounds like. It's really cool. There's this higher register that we immediately activate, right? As soon as we hit this, I'm hitting the 12th fret on the B string. If you, and I love this part, I love when I learned this, it took a while. It's kind of a tricky technique, but if you picture an airplane landing and your fretboard is the runway, we need that plane, in this case, it's your pinky with a slide on it, you need that to land really gracefully and smoothly right behind the first fret and just past the nut. If you miss that and you get it out too far, here's what happens. We didn't catch the harmonic. Here's catching the harmonic. Right? So it's like... really nice, interesting sound that you get when you catch a harmonic like that. You can do other things too, like you can hit 2 notes. I like this. There are some very cool, interesting things you can get by hitting the 7th fret. We get this B major sound. And if you combine that with some of the E major at the 12th fret, if you're into looping, you can loop that. You can loop a really beautiful chord and then just have this background to play against. But for me, catching those harmonics is really, really cool. Another one, this is one of the most sort of famous, well-known harmonic, maybe one of the best examples of harmonics being used on guitar in pop culture. The great tune Sleepwalk by Santo and Johnny. Now, this isn't played on a 6-string fretted guitar slide. It's on like a stand-up slide guitar, so it's a little different, but the technique is exactly the same. In that case, I'm in the key of C now, and I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna play, but I wanna play that up an octave. So instead of just playing at the 3rd fret, I'm gonna fret the 3rd fret with my slide, but then I'm gonna pick 12 frets higher at the 15th fret with I pick with the thumb and hold the index finger over the harmonic, and it sounds like this. Once more. Right? So that's a very cool thing. You can always pick 12 frets above whatever you're playing. Say we're playing 'Cause We've Ended as Lovers, we can do this. And then you can see right at the end, I stopped playing harmonics. I just did it for a moment. I don't need to play only harmonics. Feel free to. But I'm not going to. I just want to show you that it's something that you can have more than one technique going on. So anyway, that's a little bit about harmonics. I'd encourage you to try experimenting with some. We know that harmonics exist at the 12th, 7th, and 5th fret, but really there are harmonics all over the place. So here are the main ones. But if we keep going, see, I'm kind of just taking random swings here. And there's so much interesting harmonic action past the 5th fret. Here's the 5th fret and beyond. You can hear there's so much going on. So you hit one harmonic, it's going to interact with the next string. See how I'm digging in, I'm trying to get, I'm trying to make it wail, trying to make it cry, trying to get these notes. That wasn't very melodic playing. That was just kind of like trying to get some action out of these harmonics. That happens sometimes. Jeff will just like, he's not afraid to just like get some crazy sounds out of his guitar. So I'd encourage you to try that with harmonics. You saw me take it from really sweet and pretty to like, kind of messed up and really rocking, really kicking some butt. So try that with harmonics. So if you've heard me play at all, you've probably noticed by now that I really love using the volume pedal. I use the volume pedal all the time, and I kind of like playing with a dirty sound at most. And then if you take away some volume and some attack, it can actually clean up pretty well. This is a really nice zone because you kind of have the best of both worlds. Like if I really dig in, sounds big and fat and juicy. If I don't, this is volume pedal all the way up. I'm gonna just use my hands now, my fingers. Check this out, it cleans up nicely. So that cleaned up, it's still dirty, but now if I roll the volume pedal back just a smidge, plenty clean, sounds really good. We're not hitting 3 stomp boxes on and off and doing all this other stuff, you know. Our hands are busy playing guitar, so we don't have to worry about volume, rolling down the volume knob or anything. I just love having my foot take care of all of that. So if I were you, I would try to get into that. You can put the volume pedal at different points in the chain as well. You can have it not affect whether your tone is dirty or not. You can have it post all of your effects. So it's just sort of a master volume. I'm going right into the amp from the volume pedal. So my signal is actually changing quite a bit. Like it's clean when I have it rolled back, and then it gets dirty as I have it rolled up. I prefer that, and I'm just used to that. I like having all those options there available to me. But let me play just for a second. I'm gonna just sort of talk about and illustrate the breathing quality that the volume pedal gives me. I love how it's not just this flat thing going on. It's very expressive. I can like sort of exclaim a part of a line and then maybe tuck in a part of a line if I'm trying, just at will, however I feel. So let me show you sort of what that sounds like and feels like. This is just playing, I'm just kind of playing some free stuff, just thinking about the volume going in and out, the intensity of the line, what I'm actually playing, lining up with how much distortion we have because my foot's now up. So check this out. So I'm going a little left, right, outfield, infield. I'm jumping around to show you just the options that are available just with this setup. I am not turning 3 things on, 4 things off, and now we're doing this. It's just the volume pedal, and I'm free to explore all these dynamics, all these different, you play a lick way up high. Right? Like that range of being able to do all of that. Just with your volume being set like this at max, I think that's the way to go. I really think that's the way to go. It's too bad when our solo is coming up and now we've got to turn 2 things on and go check the timer and just like have our hands full doing things other than making music. So I would recommend a kind of nice distorted zone that you live in and try just taking away from that to clean up the sound a little bit. Try getting it at that point where that's like 70% with the volume pedal, and then that's a nice clean tone that you like. I am just this entire time plugged right into the amp. I have some reverb, but I don't have anything other than my volume pedal, my 2 hands, and this guitar. So That's a really cool place to be as far as, we're not relying on having a bunch of specific other things. We can get all these sounds with just our fingers and, this slide and this open tuning and everything. So I love the volume pedal as well because you can't help but just sort of have it come out sounding like you. And there's cool stuff like I just went like this. Something like that. We're kind of borrowing from like what a pedal steel player would do. And by the way, I play pedal steel and I think about that quite a bit when I'm playing all this slide stuff. Definitely kind of operating like a pedal steel player here. Pedal steel guys use the volume pedal all the time. All country songs always end with some last little lick like that. So this gets us into, the pedal steel world, that sacred steel, the gospel sounding stuff. Gospel runs, if you go like this, woo, the volume pedal helps that come to life so much. So I would encourage you to get a volume pedal, live with your foot on it, just experiment, just get comfortable. And before long, I think you'll just be expressing yourself in these ways that you probably weren't before you got the volume pedal. You combine that with all the stuff that we've been talking about, you can just play between 2 frets all day. It's great. It's like, who needs friends when you've got these licks between 2 frets? Well, thanks again for checking out this Slide Guitar Masterclass, and we've kind of gone over a lot of stuff. So if you have any questions, if something was kind of confusing, I'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to also work with you one-on-one. I do offer private lessons. So if you want to expand on any of the topics that we talked about, or if I'm just missing something that you're really interested in, please let me know. I'm happy to work with you on it. And just want to encourage you to do your very best in the slide guitar journey. There's no real final spot here. I'm working on it every single day and just trying to do my very best. And if you can get any of that for yourself in your life, I think the slide guitar is going to really do some amazing things for you. I know it has for me. So thanks for checking it out, and I'll see you next time.